my favorite thing in FPO is seeing Paige lose. As good as Paige is, she's held her reign long enough.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of The Nest, a disc golf podcast where we'll be diving into the biggest stories in disc golf. Typically, we're going to focus on the Pro Tour. I'm your host, Mike, alongside my co-host, Dan. Dan, say hi to the world.
Hey everybody.
So we're going to try to give this to you guys once a week. Typically, we're going to try to do Wednesdays to start. We'll see how that goes. A little bit about myself. I've been playing competitively for 3 or 4 years. More recently, I've become a TD, so I'm on both sides of the spectrum in the disc golf world. And I also have a disc golf company, Albatross Disc Golf.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a newer player. I've only been playing for about 2 years. As soon as I picked it up, I really dived into the competitive disc golf scene, and I've been doing that ever since. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Dan and I every single day talk disc golf, and a lot of the times the conversations get pretty entertaining. And we've always said, we feel like people would enjoy the conversation, so we decided to make a podcast, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So we're gonna get right into the last event, the MVP Open. Just real briefly going through the top 5. There were some people tied in 4th place: Matty O, Calvin Heimberg, and Matt Bell. And then Eagle and Ricky tied for 2nd. And then taking it down was Adam Hammis in 1st place. And Adam actually joined. It's just 4 people: Paul, Ricky, Eagle, and himself. Only 4 players ever to win a DGPT and an NT in the same year, which is, I was quite surprised when I saw that was the only 4 people to do it. He averaged 1067. So, I mean, what did you think about it?
That's a really solid win against the whole field. I mean, everybody was there. And 1067 is a really good average rating. I know ratings are not, they're a little bit of a hot topic in themselves, but as for now, I think they do show, especially compared to the field, just how well a player shot, and 1067 is really solid. And holding off Eagle and Ricky down the stretch, I think is very notable.
Yeah, I mean, ratings are always strange. I think it's important to use them in comparison round to round and tournament to tournament. Sometimes it just seems weird looking from like the last tournament, Delaware. I think the winner only averaged like 1040. So it's just weird. It's hard to compare it, but I do think it's useful. I do think Adam, like I said, joining those other 3 people, like he's been playing great, especially as of late. Um, you know, Eagle averaged 1023 that final round. We looked at his stats and they weren't terrible. Like his putting, I think Dan, I think he putted 100 from the circle, right? Um,
C1X.
yeah, it was a little lackluster. Also part of that is at the end of the round, he's probably taking some chances he wouldn't normally take. Obviously the OB on the last hole, so that's a little skewed for the rating, but kind of expected more. I mean, he's been playing so well, you can't expect him to play perfect every week. But and no disrespect to Adam, like he definitely deserved the win in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, Eagle came off 2 scorchers where he shot
Yeah.
9 down, 8 down, which, um, if it wasn't the hot round, it was tied for the hot round, I think, for both of those rounds. And just watching the live coverage, there was a few times he got in the woods in those tight gaps, and you could just see that he was, um, not in just maybe his mindset where he's trying to birdie the hole, where he's just worried about getting out the gap. And I thought that was very evident when he made a few mistakes where you just typically don't see mistakes like that from a player of Eagles caliber. And I think he was trying to battle with that mental game, and I think he unfortunately just kind of got the best of him, especially at the start. In the middle, he kind of got on a birdie streak, but he just wasn't able to catch Adam.
Yeah, Eagle's always been an interesting player for me personally because, we all remember what happened when he broke his hand a couple years ago, and his mental, like if you had to pick the weakest part of his game, definitely in years past, I would say it was his mental game for sure. And we've seen huge strides, and we have to remember he's young too. He's a kid, but um, I watched live and started to see a little bit of those old not staying in the moment, getting really upset on shots, and it seemed like it kind of carried over to next shots. Obviously we don't know, we're not in his head, and it's just one round. Obviously he played great prior, so like maybe looking too much into it, but yeah, something to look into definitely. And Eagles proven, you know he's playing well at courses this year that he hasn't played well at in the past. So I think that really is showing his growth. And obviously, you could argue first, second, third, whatever you want to put him. So I think he's fine. It's just, it did remind me of Eagle of Past, the way he kind of went about that final round. So we'll just have to see what happens. Someone else who also had the same rating final round 10-23, Paul McBeth. He started the final round in 8th. I think he ended in like 11th, so didn't make that push like you would hope he would, expect he would. And it's just that question of he's had a great year. Obviously, we looked at the stats, and he's actually second in the money list this year behind Ricky. That doesn't tell the whole story because it's so up and down each tournament, like as far as the prize pools and stuff. So it's not giving the full story, but it does feel like this is kind of a down year for Paul, at least from my perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, parity is at an all-time high. So it's not surprising to maybe not see Paul at the top as much, but I feel like if you asked him, he's definitely having a lackluster year. And I think the biggest headline, and he'll tell you, the stats will say that he's just not converting inside the circle when he needs to. Currently, he's 83% from circle one, which is 36th, which if you're a top 3 player in the world, you can't afford to have a stat that crucial, that low on the list, on the ranking list. So I think it's just mental for him, and I think next year he's going to have a fire for sure just to bounce back from this year, and I think that C1 percentage will go up.
Yeah, 83%. It's bad. It's just that's what it is. If we're talking about a top 5, even top 10 player, like, you know, obviously you can't compare player to player all the time, but Eagles 90% in the circle right now, 89 or 90, tied for first. You just can't. That makes a huge difference. That 7%, that's giving up strokes, and
Strokes, yeah.
it's not, in years past, it's not something that's plagued him really ever before. When looking back, like the last 2-3 years, he's been right around the 87 to 88, 89% for the whole season, and obviously those seasons were better than this season. And yeah, it's hard to tell with the sport growing as fast as it is. Like the parity obviously is making it tough. Comparing it to regular golf, right? So if you have a season like Paul's in terms of finishing top 10 nearly every tournament, winning a few tournaments, you're probably the best player on tour by far. Like that's a great year, but disc golf is still young enough where you want to be the best, you kind of have to rattle off 3-4 wins, especially like quality tier wins, and Paul's just not really doing that. From the outside looking, I'm sure if they didn't really know who Paul was, they'd be like, wow, this is a fantastic year. But when we're expecting Paul to win these events, it's just kind of surprising. I think it is mental, but to see arguably the best player in the world having such mental struggles with something as simple for these top players, a circle one putting, it's pretty surprising. And I don't want to make this too much. I'm a huge golf fan, and I don't want to make it too much comparable. But like I think of someone like Rory McIlroy, who arguably is like the best golfer talent wise, striking wise, and he a few years ago he won a bunch of majors. He played amazing, and since then he just couldn't putt. And it's something that seems like if you're a top player, it's something you could just fix, and maybe it isn't. But Rory hasn't, and so it's one of those things. I don't know if it's something Paul will get back or won't get back, but I don't know. Time will tell, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah. Did you have anything else for the men? I wanted to just, Matty O personally. Man, he's an enigma because he's like never around early in the year. For those that don't know, he plays down south in non-sanctioned tournaments a lot, non-PDGA sanction. They have their own sanctioning, and he just crushes it. Like he wins everything.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see him actually come back to the tour. Not come back, but come play in the tour. And he's just finishing quality every year, every tournament. We're going to talk about the top 10, the UDisc top 10 in a little bit, but I think they have him at 7th right now. And there could be an argument he should be higher. He seems to be obviously this leg of the tour is more wooded, but which is his strength. But I mean, there's something to be said. I mean, he's right there every tournament lately.
Yeah, I think Mattio's one of those guys that, especially when he shows up, kind of like a Chris Dickerson. When he's there, Chris Dickerson not so much this year, unfortunately, but Mattio's a guy that when he's there, you expect him to be at the top 10 and maybe even gunning for a victory. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then with the FBO, we had tied for fifth, Tiger Borth and Missy Gannon. Haley King was in fourth. Paige Pierce took third. Kona had a solid outing in second. And taking it down was Katrina Allen, averaging 993. Yeah, go Katrina. Won this event 9 years ago. In her interview before the tournament, she said she had a feeling this was it. This was her time, and she called her shot. She won it. Uh, Back-to-back events for her after Delaware, and obviously she looked fantastic.
I mean, Maple Hill's not a course you can show up and have an off day, or a player of not the top level can win. So, um, for Katrina to come out, and I know a lot of people are clinging on to the Paige Pierce best player in the world, and she's well deserved for that position. But Katrina's not letting that define who she is as a player, and I think that's just awesome to see her come out and dethrone Paige Pierce at a course where Paige has a pretty solid track record here at Maple Hill, and she
Yeah.
she came and balled out, which was awesome.
Yeah,
So.
for sure, for sure. Okay. So the next thing, and we're gonna try to do this most weeks. Sometimes we'll have a lot to say. Sometimes we might not have anything, but we're gonna go through the top 10, the UDisc top tens. See, talk about what we like, what we don't like, and maybe kind of debate that a little bit. So right now, it looks like for the men, Andrew Marweed's in 10th, followed by Kevin Jones, Chris Dickerson, Matteo in 7th, Kyle Klein in 6th. Adam Hammis jumped up 9 spots after this week to 5th. Calvin's in 4th, and then the top three. I mean, everyone knows who the top three is. Just depends what order. Paul, Ricky, and Eagle. Obviously, I think the two biggest talking points are probably just Adam Hammis bumping up from 14th all the way to 5th, and I would maybe say those two Prodigy guys who there's three in a row actually, 7, 8, 9 with Kevin, but Matty O, I maybe feel like could be higher. And then unfortunately, I love Chris, and we could talk more about it. I think eighth might be a little generous. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think the five, six, seven spot. I mean, you could throw them in a cup, shake it up, and pour it out, and whatever way it landed, would be just fine. Chris Dickerson, like you said, is just kind of having a down year, and I think a part of that is because he's not on tour full time, and he's very selective about the courses he comes and plays, which is good for him financially, I'm sure, but as a player at his caliber, missing out on some of the big tour spots like that, sometimes your name can be forgotten. But even when he has played I mean, it's just not what you typically see at a Chris Dickerson,
Yeah,
just for the simple fact that when he shows up, you expect him to be winning. And unfortunately, the last looks like 3 events, he's finished outside the top 10.
yeah, no,
Um,
I agree with that. I think that's a perfect way to say that because in years past, as we know, Chris doesn't do the full tour typically, and he kind of handpicks those events, whether it's convenience or whether it's tournaments he thinks he's going to do really well in. And I think because of that, like you said, whenever Chris is in an event, it's kind of just a given that he's going to be up at the top. And he's had good finishes, obviously, this year, but I think you said 3 events in a row outside the top 10. And if he's in the event, it's extremely surprising. And, you know, it's, it's easy for me to say maybe he's a little overrated at 8, but uh, who would you put above him, I guess? As we look further down the list, I said Kevin at 9, Andrew Marweed at 10th, and then I mean James maybe. Oh, and also Kale hadn't been on the UDisc. Kale LaVisca hadn't been on the UDisc ratings. He hadn't played enough Pro Tour events, I think was the issue, and he is on the list. His first time on the list, he's at 13th right now. But I mean, like I said, as you go down this list, like I guess there isn't really anyone that I would jump at that would go higher. So maybe it's deserved. I feel it seems like, and I'd be curious to know exactly kind of how these numbers are formulated, and I'm sure it's a very complex formula, but it seems very recency biased. Jumping 9 spots from one win. Maybe it's okay. Like maybe it's deserved, but it seems a little high for me to have Adam jump up that high after one event. But that being said, he's had a great year too. I just, like you said, 5, 6, 7 could go in any order probably. So I don't hate it. I just thought it was interesting. The one other thing is, when do we start talking about Paul dropping below Calvin? I know those top four have kind of mixed a little bit, but I mean, is that a real conversation we should be having, that Paul should be slipping down that a little bit? This shouldn't be having any bias. This should be doing strictly by numbers. So like, it's very easy to leave, those top guys, oh, they're just having a bad week, oh, bad month, whatever, and leave them higher. But if this is just purely numbers, then apparently he still deserves to be at 3. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the last finishes for Calvin. He's had tied for fourth, tied for fourth, tied for third, and then
Yeah.
the co-victory at Ledgestone. So, I mean, that's a pretty solid last four events. Granted, Delaware didn't quite have the full field, and couldn't go head to head with Paul, but um, looking at Paul's, his is just not as strong as Calvin's is, and he's just kind of fluctuating over the year. 11th, 7th, and 18th at Ledgestone, where Calvin tied for first. So
And that's where it's kind of strange to me that it seems so recent, in like heavily weighted on recent events, like with Adam bumping up. But recent events, it seems like Calvin, in my opinion, if you were just unbiasedly looking at the last month or two, that he would be above Paul. So it seems like it's depends on the situation almost, which is curious, but I'm sure there's a reason behind it. It should be interesting to see how it plays out for the rest of the year.
for sure.
If I would have showed you this top 10 before the year started, what would be your biggest, like, wow, like, I'm surprised by this, or wouldn't believe it?
I'll start off with the positives first. I think Adam Hammis and Kyle Klein. I think those were two players, and even more so Adam. I think he had a big kind of weight on his shoulders to really come out and perform this season,
Yep.
and I think he did that, and he's shaken up the game for sure. And then Kyle Klein is a young player where everyone knew he had it, but going out there and doing that week in and week out is another thing. And him coming out and do that and earning his title as the third Crush Boy, I think is awesome to see, and see him. And when you look at those um, names in the top five, like they should be there, and um, that's evident.
Mm-hmm.
But to see players like Chris Dickerson, Kevin Jones fall down fall down that far, and KJ more so than Chris, but have just a really shaky year, it seems like. He's had a few solid finishes, um, but as of recently, kind of been struggling, and that's just not something you see from Kevin. And I don't know what that may be. Maybe just having some timing issues, or not as much time on the course. But yeah, it's weird to see Kevin be that shaky.
For sure. Yeah, one thing I'm really excited. I agree with you. I would have said the same thing. One thing I'm excited for is, hopefully, we keep saying next year, hopefully so and so, but to get those, and we'll talk about FPO in a second here, and that's probably even more relevant. It is more relevant, but having those
Sure.
international players come over and see how much that mixes things up, because you know, especially we know how the rating system works. If you don't have top guys there, the ratings seem to be lower, and just that's just the way it is. So we don't have no idea how good these guys are overseas. Like, and we're not really gonna know until they're faced up against our top dogs here in the United States. So I think that's gonna be really exciting. So if we go over to the FPO, um, uh, so Tiger jumped up 44 spots to 10th place to take that 10th spot. We got Heidi Lane, Sarah Holcomb, Haley King, Missy Gannon. We got Henna, Katrina, Evelina, Kristen Tatar, and then rounding out is Paige in first still. So big moves, like I said, Tiger jumping 44 spots, which is pretty crazy. And
Crazy.
yeah, and not to be Kona also jumped 11 to 11th, so she wasn't 22nd, and her big finish this week got her up to 11th. But nothing really moving much. Kristen and Evelina switched spots. Um, I know Dan has something to say about that. And then Katrina and Henna switched spots as well. So Katrina getting the win, just moved up one spot to fourth, and that top three is hard top three to crack into, so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I think everyone is probably where they should be. I do think Tiger, I'm like we said, we don't know how this system works exactly, but I was looking at finishes from Tiger, and other than this top five, I mean, tied for 35th, tied for 20th. So not looking. I mean, it's solid as a touring professional, but Kona, I mean, she's been on tour all
Yeah.
year and she's had way more solid finishes, even as of recently. So I'm really not sure how that works. I don't know what the math is. It's got to be based on math, but it's just kind of weird to see Kona outside the top 10. And uh, honestly, if you ask me at any given time, is Kona a top 10 FPO player? I'm probably going to say yes,
Right.
100% of the time. So yeah, and as you mentioned, Evelina at 3, under Kristen and Paige. And as Mike knows, I'm a huge Evelina fan, and unfortunately, she cannot put the putter inside the basket from any further away than 15 feet, which is unfortunate, and that plagues a lot of players, especially yeah, just a lot of players. And so when she's putting good, I think she's number one player in the world.
Yeah, I agree. And um, it seems. I mean, we looked at her stats. Obviously, I would say putting has never been her best thing ever.
No.
But she's good enough that it didn't really matter until recently, where she's really been struggling. I mean, I would go as far as to say she has, the yips, or it's not just a bad week anymore. Like there's something going on, and um, it sucks to see that. And like you said, I mean, when she's putting good enough, she's beating everybody.
Yeah.
So she's mentioned it. I know after the championships overseas,
Championships.
there was the end of, I think it was the third round. If they play 3 or 4 rounds, end of the second to last round, and then the beginning of the last round, it was abysmal. She had like a 4 putt all within like 15-20 feet. It was hard to watch, and she mentioned it on Instagram, on her social media, that how her frustration, how it was extremely difficult to deal with, just because you do something for so long and then all of a sudden it's gone. So she was expressing frustration, and rightly so. So I mean, I just hope to see her back to where she was. So I mean, she's exciting to watch, and having her
Yeah.
at the top is always exciting. So I hope she figured it out. But yeah, no, we have some big events coming up. I'm sure this top 10 is going to switch around for both MPO and FPO. One thing about I just wanted to say, with MPO, I'm looking at it, and as far as like the dominance index, it's a pretty gradual decrease.
Yeah.
As you go down the list, the top 3 guys have a little bit of a gap on Calvin, which again is kind of surprising in my opinion. But FPO, it's so Paige has 66, Kristen has 56, Evelina has 54, and then it's a almost 20-point drop to Katrina and the rest of the field. So it's very steep. I don't know what Katrina would even have to do to break into that as far as numbers wise, but um, yeah, it's interesting to see that big of a, and I think it makes sense. The top 3 is pretty much steadfast, but yeah, kind of something interesting. Um, yeah, so I guess other relevant topics we can get into. One of which Dan and I were talking a lot about is Paul McBeth is not going to be playing in the match play event, the major that the PDGA has decided to declare it. He is going to be playing the battle at Bedford instead, it looks like. Also, Drew Gibson is not playing. I'm not sure if he's playing something else or not, but I saw he's not. They had to reset the brackets with those 2 guys not playing. But yeah, what do you think about Paul not playing in it?
Yeah. I'm not surprised just because, Paul is a player that he likes things done correctly and professionally. And when it's not done that way, he's not afraid to let you know. And I think he's very professional and respectful, so he never comes out in the public and bashes on anyone or any of the professional associations trying to grow our sport. But I think him not playing and going to play a small local B tier, I would assume it's a B tier, just a small local B tier, I think is a testament to how probably upset he is with how this event is being ran and how it's been decided it was a major before it was even told to the players, which
Right.
is absurd. So I think, yeah, it's just a testament to how probably him among a lot of the other players, that's how they're feeling about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, he is going to play the Battle of Bedford. Obviously, that has some grip block connections, which he's a part
Foundation.
of. So it makes, yeah, foundation rather. Sorry. And it's a pretty big tournament. I mean, I think it is a B tier, 122 players in open. Like it's a pretty big tournament. But obviously it's not in comparison to the match play. Like that's the premier event for the week. Do you think, I don't want to get too far into it because we are going to be talking about the match play and making it a major a little bit later, but um, Paul has been known to kind of not play events or to make a stance in that way. Do you think that's enough? Does the casual, or further than casual, but the guy who follows along, who is important to the ecosystem, is he knowing why Paul's not playing? Like, should Paul be taking it a step further and making statements about these things, or is not playing enough?
That's a good question. I think it's getting closer to where someone like Paul can come out and on social media, maybe in podcasts and interviews, and make it be known where he stands very, very definitively and through speech. But before, when you have players where their contracts are pretty small and a lot of it just gets them by on tour and maybe with an extra little bit of cash in their pocket, where you couldn't afford to come out and say things that
Right.
might make people look away from you. And Paul just signed a big deal, and I think he's won the hearts of most of disc golf, the most of the disc golf scene. So I think it's getting close to a point where Paul can come out and say stuff like that. But if you're looking at a player like, a smaller player like Emerson Keith or Kyle Klein, like you really can't come out and say those things and
Yeah.
lose fans or lose the support of a company because
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to tour at that point.
I
So.
agree. Yeah. No. I agree. I think that disc golf is still young enough. Contracts aren't big enough for players to really stick their neck out on things like that. Paul being obviously the exception, probably maybe the only exception right now. I mean, we obviously don't know other people's contracts. There's some other people who are doing just fine and probably could if they wanted to. But I think Paul, and it's not for me or anyone else to say what Paul is responsible to do, but I do think with him having that relationship and having that contract and having that peace of mind, I guess, where he kind of needs to step into that ambassador role. I think that's just kind of the way it is, and I think we'll see it. He's not afraid to say things. I think he's just very strategic about it, and um, it was pretty evident that players were a little bit upset about the match play, but yeah, I mean, and similarly, like for example, Paige and Eagle, from what we can see, both boycotted the Delaware Challenge for slightly different reasons, but the same reason. At the PDGA, Eagle boycotting because, as we all know, he was very unhappy with how Worlds was ran. If you remember, he put on his social medias the out of bounds issues, where, for those that don't know, in the middle, after the tournament had already started, I don't recall if it had been one or two rounds already played. They added OB lines, additional OB lines to the course without really. They told them, but didn't really give details on where, when, and so there were discs that would have been inbounds the day before that were out of bounds the next day, and Eagle, rightly so, was very upset about that, and other things about Worlds. And then Paige, for women's U.S. women's, correct?
Yeah.
She was, we were talking about people who aren't afraid to say something. Paige doesn't seem to be afraid to say anything, because Paige made it clear that she wasn't a fan of how much attention the U.S. women's was getting over in California, and how I believe they played four events, four courses, which,
Right.
yeah, that's a whole other topic. But
Yeah.
and it was really, and if she would have just said those things, and maybe, I guess I'd be curious if she would have said what she said, and the PDGA would have been open and willing to hear it, and maybe just said sorry, or hey, it's even not say sorry, just be like, that's something we'll definitely look into in the future or something. But instead, what happened was she got bashed by one or two members of the PDGA. The social media acted not like a professional sanctioning company, and it was just a strange situation. So yeah, I think we're at a situation where players are going to start doing that, and it just kind of is going to be interesting to see if the governing bodies, whether it's the PDGA or the Disc Golf Pro Tour, care. If is one player important enough. it's hard to say. I don't think. Do you? If would more people watch the Delaware Challenge if Eagle had played it? I mean, if he's in contention, I would say yeah. I
Yeah.
know the numbers were down for the Delaware Challenge, so um, is that because of
Well,
Eagle? Is that because of multiple players? Like obviously we don't know, but yeah,
I mean, final round. The Delaware Challenge was right around 7,000 viewers on YouTube, which is typically you see that in double digits for most
right,
final rounds.
yeah,
And that could be just because some of the players in contention, or Connor O'Reilly ended up taking it down, but you typically don't see his name, so that could be something that plays into it. But not having Paul or Eagle there, kind of not really, but it kind of makes you feel the event is just a little bit less prestigious
yeah,
in a way.
yep,
So whether they're not there because they had a wedding that weekend or they're not there because they're making a stand against the PDGA,
right,
I think that's kind of irrelevant. But when you go to watch this and consume it as a fan, them not being there for whatever reason it is, makes it feel less prestigious. So if that's a common theme, if players like Paul, Eagle, and maybe even you start to see more players, if they don't show up to these NTs, it's just gonna increase that feeling. And the PDGA or even the Disc Golf Pro Tour is gonna have to start doing things about that.
yeah, for sure, I agree. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna try to do this every week, something kind of fun. We're gonna pick one debate topic, sometimes two, and we're gonna randomly have to pick a side. So there's some of these topics we both agree on, some that we don't agree on, but we're not gonna get a choice on what side we're on. The one we're gonna do this week is, as we mentioned before, making the match play event a major. So basically, the decision, the PDGA's decision to kind of just, hey everybody, this is a major. Like that's just we're just deciding this. So I have two cards here. I have agreeing with the PDGA to make it a major and disagreeing. So I have them in my hand right now. Dan, pick right or left.
Boy. Left.
Left. Okay, so Dan, you have to do that. It's a bad thing.
Okay.
So and I can see Dan breathing a sigh of relief because we are, you know, actually, I'm not gonna say it. We're just gonna have this
Yeah.
conversation. It doesn't matter who what thinks. So just quickly, we're not gonna spend a ton of time on it, but Dan, I'll let you go first. A couple minutes on why you think it's a bad idea, and then I will show you why you're wrong.
Okay, I'm ready. So I mean, just to start it off, I'll take a nice quote from Paul Ulibarri. Um, I remember him. I love this quote, and I remember listening to it on Smashbox. It made me laugh. He was talking about the people. He said, like, who created this? Who thought this was okay? Like these guys in the PDGA all get in a room, and they're all looking at each other like, man, we need people to start watching more disc golf. So what do we do? Let's. Oh, we've done like a bracket thing in the past with the finale, and that works really well. But maybe we're like thinking about match play, like a lot of like amateur events do that, and that works pretty well for that, pretty good for them. And then they all looked at each other and stopped, and one goes, "Man, we should just do it at the same time." And not just at an amateur level, but let's take this to the highest level that disc golf offers and make it a national tour where players have never ever practiced a format like this. Um, and if you wanted to do something like this for an all-star event, that would be awesome. And it would be so enjoyable to watch. And I'm sure it will be enjoyable to watch, but as a professional player, when, thousands and thousands of dollars are on the line, it would feel um just upsetting, especially for me, and I know a lot of the other players feel the same way, to um just be thrown out there with a setting they've never played before, and just yeah, it just feels tossed together and not well thought out, and just a little I don't know if childish is the right word, but feels like something you go out on Sunday to a weekly league and you show up and they tell you how to play and then you do it, not to go out there and play for a national tour status and thousands of dollars. So yeah.
Okay. You made some okay points, but um, you're wrong, and I'll tell you why. So
Okay.
disc golf needs this event. It's one of those things where Yeah, it's great to see four event or 3 or 4 rounds of traditional boring stroke play, and it's just, but it's played out. Like we all know how that goes. People are, think of an event where someone wins by like 12 strokes, 10 strokes, and you don't even the last round's not even worth watching. It doesn't even matter. Like why even have it at that point? Whereas match play, this is going to give an opportunity that you can have the worst player in the field go against that best player, and on any given day they can beat them because it's just one hole. That's all that matters. One hole and then the next, and it's going to be way more exciting. You know, sure, disc golf disc golf views might be up right now, and the game might be growing, but it's not. We need something different. So this is pretty hard. um, Listen, okay, so we need to see that some players just aren't cut out for stroke play. It's a long tournament, but there might be players who on any given day on one round are better than Eagle McMahon, better than Paul McBeth. But because, maybe they just aren't conditioned the same way. Like we need something that shows on any given round who's the best player, and that's what match play will do. It'll be exciting. People will be interested in it. It's going to grow our audience. It's going to bring in outside sponsors, and match play is super exciting in regular golf. And sure, they don't have a major that's match play, but we're not golf, so we can do what we want. And Dan, I think you won this debate.
You went out there and you lied a little bit, and you said it
Guys,
with a smile, and you did your part. But if we do stuff like this, we're gonna have our boy Thomas Gilbert, who unfortunately just kind of snuck by the first 2 rounds and then popped off with the 1084 rated last round, which is great for him. But
yeah, well
did
done.
he win the event? No.
Listen,
But
you know, I wish maybe looking back on this, we should have picked something that I feel like is even debatable on both sides because this just isn't. Um, First off, it's just interesting, and granted, this is the pro tour we're talking about. It's the pro, it's the highest level, and they have the means necessary to make events great right away, and I understand that. But you can't have an A tier without being a B tier for 5 years, multiple years, and proving that you're a good event and that it's a course that makes sense and all this stuff, and to just golf didn't just make an event. Like golf didn't make an event last year and go, hey, this is another major. Like you don't make majors. Majors become majors. Like they become prestigious. If I asked you the top prestigious tournaments in disc golf, you would give me USDGC, you'd give me Worlds, you give me probably European Open, and then yeah, like maybe we don't have that fourth major, but that's okay. Like we can either not have 4 majors, that's okay, or there's plenty of we just had maybe the most non-major prestigious event on tour. Like name a more prestigious tournament than MVP Open. Like it's been there forever. Anyone can win it, but it takes a great player to win it. And it's just like it just to have this new, we don't know what's gonna happen. Like it might be a fluke. It might be just a joke. And just to like imagine if I'm not imagine if Dan goes and wins this because it's just like a fluke, doesn't make a lot of sense. For Dan to be able to say he's won a major, like it just we don't know what's going to happen. It just doesn't make sense to throw this as a major. It's just another example of not listening to the players, not even not listening, not really caring what the players want, and it just seems like a grab, and I'm not sure what it's grabbing because I don't know who. Is anyone excited? I mean, I'm excited to watch it in the sense that like I don't know what's gonna happen and it's new and like pretty unique, but I don't want my majors to be new and unique. I want them to be like the events of the year, And if
go
you
ahead.
have arguably your best player and not arguably your most popular player deciding to skip it to go play in a B tier, like you need to reevaluate. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think having a match play event during the year is awesome. I think that's a great idea. And I mean, if it's on Disc Golf Pro Tour, I think that's fine. Like, I think that's great. But to make it into this thing that it's not, it just doesn't. Uh, the decisions being made there just don't make a lot of sense. So, we're gonna do debate topics every week, and again, we just really wanted to do that one. But put in the comments debate you want to see, or we're gonna look at different places on social media to find good debates, and hopefully we'll get one that ideally we actually do disagree on, and maybe we'll have a pretty heated debate on it, because Dan and I can get pretty heated sometimes, so it'll be good TV. So rounding out, we're just gonna go into the next event, which is Green Mountain, Smuggler's Notch and Fox Run Meadows. Obviously, talking about prestigious events, you could argue it's more prestigious MVP. It kind of depends who you ask, probably. Last year for the men, Kevin Jones won by 4 strokes. Had a great tournament. It was kind of that tournament that ramped him into like that strong finish in the year where he won this, and then he won the finale for the Pro Tour, obviously. And then for the women, it was a story of Paige and Haley King just destroying the field. Paige won, Haley got second, but they both, third place was over 10 strokes behind. So this is a course that favors, for the women, distance, and obviously that's why Paige and Haley were up there. It'll be interesting to see if anyone else can kind of sniff it. Obviously, Katrina's playing really well right now, so maybe I think she got 4th last year, but again, I mean, it might have well been 30th. It was like by like 15 strokes. Yeah. So, I mean, who do you look at? Let's go to the men first. Who are you looking at to maybe take this down or be surprising?
I mean, yeah, you look at the top 10, and obviously you can take the top players, Eagle, Ricky, Paul, Calvin, and they're always there, and they're always going to make a run for their money. But as like a surprising, I think Matty O's someone where they can. This is a course that suits him, or both the courses actually. This is one of those unique ones where I think you have two courses that complement each other really well, and you have distance, but you also um, get to go in the woods and test that. So you have people like a James Conrad, Matt Oram, even Kyle Klein, where they can go out and bomb with the best of them, but when they feel comfortable in the woods and throw really nice tight lines. So yeah, I think James Conrad, Matty O got a good run at this, and I'd like to see. I love James and Matty O, but Matty O hasn't won a Pro Tour event. I think it'd be awesome
Right.
to see him come out and win something like GMC.
Yeah, I agree. I think Matteo. If I remember right, I don't know if it was I on a podcast. It was maybe on Nick and Matt show. He seemed hesitant. I could be wrong, but he seemed hesitant to play this event. I think he said we'll see with kind of like a laugh. Like, it seemed like there's an inside joke going on. He is signed up. He does look like he's gonna play. Everyone's here. All the top guys, which is obviously encouraging. I think it's gonna be a great event. James is great at this course in the past. I think he's had a very solid year. Obviously, anytime you win Worlds, you can just call it a good year, right? But
Great
um,
year.
I think that he will be someone who'll be up towards the top. I'm really excited to see Adam Hammis, see if he can continue his hot streak. And one person I am looking forward to or hoping for is for Kevin Jones. This was a big event for him. This was like a turning point in the year for him last year, and it's a course that fits him pretty well, and kind of hope to see him get that monkey off his back this year for this one.
Yeah. And
Um, Go
real
ahead.
quick, Calvin Heimberg, I think when he was younger coming up in the scene, they had Worlds actually out here, and that's the first time he ever like touched the spotlight at a world championship. I think he might have been either on lead or chase card. And, I mean, he just came out and torched these courses. So even though he is fourth rated player in the world right now, and you expect him to be there, I think it would be nice to see him come out and take a solo victory after Ledgestone.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We can look at the top 10 all we want, but if you had to ask me somebody, if I had to pick someone any given week to be in the top 3, I'm probably just gonna pick Calvin.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't gotten worse than 4th since July. Like, he's always there. It's just a matter of can he just take that one extra step to finish it? And it's, it's one of those things, like, I know I've heard some people kind of question, like, that final drive, like the foot on the pedal, like just to finish out tournaments. And I think he has it. I think we don't see it because he's very calm and collective. I mean, that's just his mentality. But yeah, I think any tournament, it's going to be easy to say Calvin. And that's why we don't really want to. I mean, we could do our top 3 or our top 5, and it's just going to be hard if we're being real and honest about it to have not the normal top 3 or 4 guys. So we want to look towards, who are those surprising guys that can maybe make a jump. So yeah. Dan, did you have anything else on the men?
No.
So if we get into the women, obviously, I think for me it's just pretty simple. It's can anybody beat Paige at this place? I mean, this would be the time to do it. I think she's not really at the top of her game right now, sharpness wise. Katrina's obviously playing really well, but and it's a new tournament. Last year's a long time ago, but for them to win by that much, like it's hard seeing anyone else winning this event for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see Haley King come out and win. My favorite thing in FPO is seeing Paige lose. As good as Paige is, she's held her reign long enough, and I think there's some players in FPO that have what it takes. I mean, that could be Kona Panis, Haley King, Manahano sisters. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of FPO players that can come out and ball out on any given week, and GMC is one of those events. If Paige isn't playing too hot, it'll show, and I think this year especially, it's not going to be a 10-stroke win.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tight with probably 3 to 6 players or so. So
yeah, I think it's easy to see it in the men because it's so drastic and so different from years past, of the just how many different people can win any given week. But there's something to be said for the women, maybe even more so as far as comparing to years past, just because it was just Paige and Katrina. Like, if Paige had a bad week, Katrina would just win. And all year, I mean, they're still winning a lot of events, don't get me wrong, but there's other names that are making these runs week in and week out. And I think, for as young as the game is, you could say the women's game is still even at a earlier spot where more women are starting to realize that they can take disc golf seriously and have it be something worth doing. And especially, we look overseas, and I think this tournament will be a good indicator of how much the women's game has grown even in the last year, because I agree with you. I do think that it's going to be closer than last year, and it's going to show just how much closer, how tight the women's game is compared to before. So, yeah, I would agree.
we're going to say that, and Paige is going to come out and beat the field by 20 strokes.
And she might, but, And let me, disclaimer, I don't think Dan has a vendetta against Paige Pierce. I don't think. Maybe he can correct me, but it is nice to see other people win, and it's nice to see competitive rounds. I mean, no one wants to pop into the women's feed and see, oh, Paige is winning by 30. Like, we want to see good disc golf by everybody, and it's always exciting when there's an actual tournament to be won, so yeah. But all right, guys, I think that's going to be it for the first episode. Let us know how we did. Give us suggestions, give us some debate topics, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace out, guys.